Hello, everyone. Welcome to DataStax Academy. I am Luke Tillman, technical evangelist for DataStax, joining you from sunny Denver, Colorado. And I am happy to be joined in the studio by two of my colleagues, David Gilardi and Jeff Carpenter. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
So, in a previous video, we kind of talked a little bit, and I did a lot of talking. So it's kind of cool to be able to turn the tables on the two of you now. But we kind of talked a little bit about the past and where KillrVideo, where it came from, and some of the history. So now I'm really interested to kind of get your perspective now that we've handed the project off, to the two of you, and you're going to be kind of moving the project forward. What kind of direction we're going to take it, and kind of some of the ideas that you guys have. But the first question that I have for the two of you is, now that you've had some time to kind of dig into KillrVideo, and David, I know you worked on a Java implementation, something that we didn't have for a really long time and really wanted. I'm kind of just curious, what are your impressions? What's it like working with KillrVideo now that the two of you are kind of in charge of moving things forward?
Yeah, so I'll take a first crack. From my perspective, there's actually two levels to this, right? The first part of it is the first time that I got introduced to KillrVideo. This is before I had any knowledge of things like, etcd, gRPC, any of the microservices implementation. I had never worked with the DSC driver in any of the languages before. Anything totally new at a lot of the technology that was in KillrVideo. So my first experience with it really was as a regular developer, just walking in, looking at the documentation that you had, the explanations and everything, trying to learn how the microservices work, downloading it, getting it running in MyID, all that, right? And from that standpoint, and looking at that from the developer standpoint of someone who's just trying to get this thing up and running, because I want to get into some DSC driver code, I want to see how this stuff works, it was actually surprisingly easy, right? To be able to stand it up, get everything going. Between the download and reading the instructions, I had a working version locally on my laptop within a couple hours, right? And from that standpoint, it allowed me to kind of see how everything interacted and that kind of deal. Now, going to the next level of that as an actual evangelist and someone who's developing against the multiple language platforms, now I need to understand, how do the microservices work? Where's the front end coming from? How do I register my services and all that kind of stuff? There was a big learning curve, honestly. Now, that wasn't a bad learning curve. It was just a big learning curve. And a lot of that was because I just didn't have the immediate familiarity. That's a easy word for me to say, with all of the various pieces and everything. So now that I've gotten a chance to really dig into all the components and everything, it's been very enlightening, especially looking at comparing and coding against the C#, Node.js, and the Java versions, right? And being able to see then some of the common denominators across the drivers. Matter of fact, this is kind of a plug back to you, Luke. With the microservices choices that you made with gRPC and everything, how seamless that really made. I mean, you mentioned before in the previous talk that part of the reason why you chose some of the directions you did was because in a real organization like where we came from, it's a very true thing that you might be Java one day, you might be C# the next, you might be a combination of those things, right? And to implement it in such a way that makes that seamless. And that is my experience. I haven't had to touch, which is so cool. Like, the microservices have all worked seamless regardless of what version I'm in. It's really slick, the web UI, all that kind of stuff. So definitely the learning curve was a big part of that. And now that I've gotten past that point, I'm able to fly pretty quickly with the different versions. Asynchronous programming was a real fun part of that as well. I was somewhat new to the asynchronous world, and seeing how that is implemented differently again across the different language versions, and really having to tie that stuff together in the Java piece was definitely some work there. So my thing wanted to go on.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that. I mean, that was definitely a part of the learning curve for me too. Is coming in and learning the asynchronous programming style. And I actually remember asking at one point, like, seems like the dominant paradigm in our Java implementation is kind of the asynchronous, I'm doing all these things with listenable futures, and I'm not used to programming like this. Can't we have a simpler example that just does synchronous, get my result set, iterate through it, send the results back? And I remember Patrick saying to me, like, well, Jeff, this is a real world application. This is how real world applications are done. This is not example code. My first Cassandra program example. I mean, this is definitely like real live application. So for me, coming in, I've been working for the past few years as an architect. So, typically I would be on the other end of some of these decisions about what technologies we're going to use and how we're going to use them, and setting up the programming standards and the coding standards. And so great change of pace for me coming in, walking into someone else's code base where all these technology decisions and conventions have already been put in place, and getting to feel again what it feels like to be on the receiving end of someone else's technical decisions. And walking in and having my own opinions about why are we using gRPC? Wouldn't it be better if we were using REST APIs for all these services? And so it's really that good dose of humility to come in and look at the technology choices that have been made by another person, and they're equally valid in many, if not all cases, to the choices that you might have made coming in, like with your own personal preference, and this is the way that I've always done things. It's a great eye-opener to come in and see how someone else has done something, and to take that as a learning experience. And I think you and I both, David, have a little bit of that polyglot type exposure to multiple languages and multiple implementations now. That's really essential for your breadth and maturity as a developer. If you're just going to say, okay, I only do Java.
Oh, especially in today's day and age. I could get in a whole talk on that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did it give you a little bit of an appreciation on how the various programming languages do asynchronous code? Like, it's very different.
Oh, yeah.
Some are similar, but
I'll probably get in trouble for this, and I'm sure there's going to be someone here who can counter me. But let me, I've been coding, my core language is Java. I code in a bunch of different languages in half for years, but the core one that I've really focused on is Java. And I will say, but the C# and Node.js implementations of asynchronous programming kind of knock Java out of the park. They were so much easier to work with. The Java piece with completable futures and everything, while it is pretty full-fledged API, I mean, you can do all sorts of stuff with it. It just, at least in my opinion, and in my noob asynchronous knowledge, I'll say it was a lot harder to get moving with that compared to the C# and Node.js implementations, without a doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, and Jeff, to your point about architecture, it's funny being a team of one, right? So I was a sort of an architecture and development team of one, with Patrick to bounce some ideas off of. But one of the cool things about having you guys here now and kind of taking over the project is, we're a much bigger team. Yeah. You could, going forward, as you're kind of making these architecture decisions, maybe have a lot more people to kind of bounce these ideas off of, and we can all bring our own preconceived notions of how it should be and hash it out maybe a little bit more like it is in the real world.
Yeah, true. Yeah, very true.
So I'm curious, guys, what are you like? Now that you're taking it over, what's next for the project? What it is what it is right now, but what are we going to do? What are the new features? What are some of the goals for the future of KillrVideo?
Yeah, so one of the things that's really great about this as an application domain is that there are more and more features that you could add. You might say that it's similar to YouTube, but there's a lot of things that are slightly different directions that we're able to take things in that different direction to really show off the features of our products that we have at DataStax. So, one of the things that we observed right away in looking at the application is that it does a lot with just the core Cassandra, but then there were a lot of features that had been added even to the open source Apache Cassandra project that had not really been taken advantage of yet. Like, I don't think that there were any user-defined types. I don't know that there were any there's not really that many indexes. There was no materialized view usage. There was just a number of things where we thought, okay, there are definitely elements of the technology that we want to show off, and not in a way where we're just trying to force fit something in or use something for the sake of using it. But if you look at this domain of a video sharing application, there are a legitimate number of places where we need more advanced search capability. We need more complex data structures in order to represent things. So, not only are we looking to add more of those core Cassandra, things that have been added to the CQL language, but also incorporating more of DataStax Enterprise as a product line, because there is a legitimate value add on top of the core Cassandra that DSE brings. So we have, there's an interesting quirk right now that the search capabilities of KillrVideo are, we for the most part have parity across the different language implementations, but there are cases where there's a search capability that's implemented using DSE search in one area, and then it's just a straight table query on Cassandra in another area. So we're trying to bring those things into parity together. And then another area that we're super excited about is incorporating graph. So
it's my next project.
The DSE graph implementation, in order to bring a recommendation engine kind of capability into KillrVideo. So if you liked these videos, you might also like these videos. There's something like that there right now, but it's really just based on text tags and not any sort of, AI, machine learning, all this sort of gravy that we're starting to bring in, doing those kinds of things based off of the core graph implementation and bringing that in. I think that's really going to take it to the next level in terms of a capability as an application. So I don't know. What did you think, David?
I agree with everything you just said. No, I mean, yeah, so it really is. Yeah, of course, I like that answer, right? No, it is, as Jeff said, really just adding to it. I mean, we're definitely pushing into the DSE 5.1 kind of realm to really start to kind of exercise some of the new features that have become available in the drivers and everything, so we can not only provide that out to developers, so we give them a starting place, right? So not only do they have the API docs and things like that, but here, these are real working examples in a real actual application. Check this out. And you touched on this as well. I mean, we're definitely, when we implement these features, we're purposely looking to make them relevant. They're not contrived. They're trying, they're real world examples of, okay, I have a real app here. This really needs to do this thing over here. Well,
right.
how would I, what's the real best way to implement that? And the cool thing too is, we get to interface with the internal DataStax teams and find out, are there best use cases? Are there, ways that we can really kind of exercise some of this stuff? So yeah, definitely pushing into some of the new features.
Yeah, and that we're going to make another video in upcoming series talking about a hackathon that we did that involved a lot of the internal development teams and some of the cool stuff that they came up with that was even beyond things that we had on our roadmap for where we wanted to take KillrVideo. So that is an incredibly creative team that has a lot of great ideas that we're able to draw from. So
yeah, I think it's really just a testament, to 3 years ago when KillrVideo started, to now, and some of the ideas that you guys have, just how far DataStax Enterprise as a product has come. You have all these kind of cool new things to play with, like Graph is a great example. And then, I know, David, you've been dabbling a little bit with actually getting this thing live and, kind of speaking of new things from DataStax, actually running this on the DataStax managed cloud. Can you talk a little bit about, what that's been like and kind of maybe plans there?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that is in process right now. We are actually, we're technically running on DMC, the DataStax managed cloud right now. I haven't
tell you the URL.
Yeah, so. It's not public yet. Ha 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 ha. But it is. But no, I mean, the whole point of this is like an eat our own dog food mentality. I'm sure you've heard that phrase before. So we have our own actual real production implementation on our own cloud with our cluster and so on and so forth. So that whole experience, There's really kind of a couple different aspects. There's the application aspect. There's the part of standing up those very microservices and stuff that you built into the Docker container and actually putting them out there in a real world app, or real world infrastructure and everything. And then there is the DMC aspect with the cluster and having them manage the cluster. So it's actually been really neat because we approach this as working with the DMC team like we are an outside client, that we are not DataStax doing this, that we're an actual client who has gone to them, we're paying them, we're going through all of the motions and everything. So it's been really neat, from the perspective of coming in that way and exercising them, if you will, and making them deal with us. I tried to come up with as realistic and slightly absurd project plan as I could to just kind of mirror what we see in the real world.
We all know that doesn't really happen in the real world. No, people don't have ridiculous requirements.
Never, ever. Yeah, exactly. No, so it's been great. It's been awesome because, again, getting this up on real infrastructure and everything, and again, eating our own dog food as far as the DMC part goes. I think that's really kind of important. So what the neat thing about that too is that now that is informing some of the next steps that we're going into with the app itself, especially from the application end. I actually decided for now, I was debating whether or not I was going to go full microservice, right? Because you have all these microservices you built into it. Do I want to go full microservice and actually implement every one of those on their own service up on AWS, or do I want to keep the Docker containers or whatever? I totally cheated and stuck with Docker for now. But that's, it's all running. And what's awesome, by the way, going back to what we talked about before with having like things like gRPC and being seamless across the languages, I can run all of the languages up on my instances. It doesn't matter. I can actually interchangeably switch between them. No big deal, right? That to me is, I'm sorry, I just keep using the word awesome. It's awesome. It's totally awesome because, again, from our perspective, in having to keep these language versions in parity and keep them all relevant and things like that, it makes our job a lot easier and gives a great example, as you mentioned earlier in the previous video, Luke, about, again, if you have an organization that has multiple languages, how do you go about, what would be one way you can go about developing your applications, right? And that would support that. And so anyway, yeah, altogether, it's been a very fun and knowledge-attaining experience. Yeah.
We should totally do that, David. What you have deployed right now is all Java microservices. Is that right?
No.
Or is it mixed?
It's totally mixed.
Oh, that's awesome.
Absolutely mixed. Yeah. It's let's see. All the web UI front end is Node.js. The service, the other service. I think you did, Luke. You did all that in Node, right? It's all Node.
Yep. Yeah. The web server is all Node.
Okay.
Yep.
So all of that part is in Node, but the service implementation that I'm doing, I either do in Java, or I can do in Node.js, or I can do in C#. So at any given time, it just depends on which one I want to launch.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, guys, I want to kind of close with, if there's anyone out there watching this and they might be interested maybe in helping out, or they might want to contribute something to KillrVideo, is there anything you would suggest, any things on the wish list, or how would somebody go about kind of contributing to KillrVideo, or what are some things that maybe you'd be looking for from someone out there hoping to help?
Yeah, this is an area that I think we're trying to move toward, is opening up our roadmap a little bit. So we're working on getting, our internal Google Docs that have lists of things that we want to add, to getting that incorporated as actual issues into the GitHub project, the KillrVideo GitHub project. So that is a transition that's in place. And then, coming out of that, I think there's going to be everything from little tasks here and there to clean things up, to major things like writing a Python implementation. As we look across, we have our own internal data about which drivers are most popular and which languages are the most frequently used in terms of our client drivers. And, we're getting a lot of feedback that, it really would be a good idea to have a Python implementation that turns out to be pretty popular. So
yeah, so if someone wants to write that up, go ahead. Or the C++
I wish I could have convinced someone to do a Python implementation. I've been trying forever. Well, gentlemen, thank you for your time. This has been super interesting, and hopefully we'll do it again sometime soon.
Yeah, very
cool.
All
right, thank you.
Thank you.